This is my story of how I reverted to Islam 5 years ago. The reason why I wanted to post this was in hopes that many of you who are reading Quran or maybe looking for a little bit of, excuse my son in the background, looking for a little bit of encouragement, or maybe just me telling my story and some of my thought processes at the time will help you, like, maybe elucidate for you that, like, you're on the right path, even if you're unsure. I want to preface by saying that, and I want to say this with as much humility as possible, that growing up, Allah protected me. I had so much of Islam in my heart from when I was born, and it was unlike anything I saw around me growing up. I saw a lot of people who went to Catholic school and stuff like that. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, in the United States. And I lived in a place where alcohol was rampant. The Western world's dunya is just so dunyaing. And long story short, a lot of the people that live in that area don't really leave that area. Environment is one of the biggest factors that contributes to the outcome of your life. And I still didn't end up living there. And once I actually started learning about Islam, like years later, there really wasn't anything, like mashallah, there wasn't anything that surprised me. I just felt like I already knew everything. Subhanallah. So from then to now, there's been some tests, there's been some trials, and there's been signs that I would become a Muslim. And I'm grateful to be talking about it now. I'm 29. I have 2 kids. And Islam has become critical in my mental health and well-being as a mom. So if I needed a sign, had I not gotten any signs earlier, now would be my sign, just like as a mom. But yeah, when I was growing up, I just had this internal almost compulsion to do the right thing. Not everything, but a lot of stuff that's just hard for people with addictions and, I don't know, things that bog people down, save for materialism. We're still working on that one. But drugs, alcohol, just some people's nafs, their egos, run away really easily into the temptations of the world, as one might say. But I just felt like I was looking at everybody, like I almost felt like alien because none of it made any sense whatsoever. And I just, like, almost didn't understand. I couldn't empathize with alcoholism or like anything like that. I was like, just don't do it. It's so bad for you. It doesn't make you feel good. Like that was my kind of personality. I wasn't super preachy about it. You know, I didn't want to proselytize just common morality to people. God, I feel like I sound so pretentious talking about this, but that's how it was. Okay, that's just how it was. Now flash forward to college. I'm taking courses in Scandinavian studies and film in Wisconsin, and I pick up the Swedish language, right? I was super fixated on Scandinavia also from like when I was 16. And as I was learning Swedish, I was like, wow, I'm just like, I was like really high on myself. I was like, I'm learning this language really quickly. I was decently fluent for like never having gone to another country. So I just had like the brain for languages. So I got a little cocky and I was like, you know what? Let's just take Arabic. Like, let's do it. Like, it's so different. That way I can't confuse it with anything else. If I were to take like Norwegian or Danish or something, or even German, I was like, too similar. I need something much different. So I enrolled in an Arabic course at the beginning of a second semester, I think sophomore year of college, and then dropped out because I was like, there's a lot more to this than I realize. And mind you, I'm at the biggest university in Wisconsin and the capital. And there's just like a cultural hub at this point, and there's so many different kinds of people that I had never been subjected to. And my roommate was Pakistani, her family was Muslim. There were people in my friend group and just like around me with hijab on, and I don't know, I was interested in it. I just had like this sort of internal knowing, kind of, not that I look back on it. And also I've always felt like really spiritual and kind of attributed, before I had Islam, I tried Buddhism a little bit. The way that capitalism markets like modern wellness is super aesthetic. So like taking on like, oh, you know, using vernacular like the universe and manifestation and all that stuff. I'm not saying that it's all hogwash or anything like that, but that was kind of enough for me. In Arabic, there's a word called aql, which means to have a mind, but that also implies to me that you have a moral compass. It's kind of when you meet people that are just good-hearted, they're not Muslim, but you're just like, you want to know them and be close to them because they're trustworthy. They have like a really strong sense of moral justice and things like that. To me, that's aql. And I had that before becoming Muslim and taking my shahada. But when I was in college, I had a really strong connection to what I attributed my higher self, which in Islam we have the ruh, right? The nafs is your ego, your personality, earthbound dunya characteristics of the self, and then the ruh is like that kind of midway point of your higher self, right? So I was very connected to my higher self at the time and felt like I always followed my intuition. It was never wrong. And then that led me onto a Swedish TV show a long time ago. But when I came overseas to film it, I met my husband, who was, I didn't know it at the time, Muslim. And his family was, I think, mashallah, they were pretty aware that maybe they shouldn't say anything to me about them being Muslim because, and they were right, I had like terrorism worms in my brain. And, you know, the West does such a good job of scaring people away from Islam that even though I had been subjected to it, kind of, I had so many contradictory beliefs about it at the time. So it really wasn't anything that came up with my husband and I until quite a bit after, and I think it was a good thing. But then I got married and I actually moved to Norway because he wasn't in Sweden, he was in Norway. And then from there, I remember there was like a pivotal day. I went for a walk in the mountains because there's lots of mountains in Norway. And I was just having this sensation that part of me just felt so complete in my spirituality. Like I didn't feel like, I felt like there were some voids and some holes in my faith, but I couldn't really see them at the time. But it wasn't like, I felt complete enough to kind of doubt whether or not I needed Islam because I'm in the modern world and like, I'm a good person and whatever. But then God humbled me and taught me a lot between then and now, and I've had 2 kids. And but the thing that helped me make my decision was the Ramadan, and I just wanted to try the fast without any pressure, right? And mind you, growing up, I was never pressured into anything having to do with any religion. My family was like, free willy, believe whatever you want, it doesn't matter to us. So I had zero spiritual abuse and nothing I had to work through as an adult, which is huge protection, I realize now. But yeah, I did Ramadan, was it maybe 6 years ago or something like that, and it was phenomenal. God made it so easy for me. I felt so good, and Allah has not made it easy for me since, mind you. So that was his sign, I think, to me that it would be okay, it would be great to be Muslim, because how I felt after doing Ramadan, I was like, yeah, there's nothing tops that. So then I took my Shahada 5 or 6 years ago. And then I'm just really grateful. Like, I didn't have anybody forcing me. Even the family I married into, they were like, yeah, you know, maybe if it works for you, it works for you. But there wasn't anybody telling me that I had to. Nobody ever told me anything. So my relationship between Allah has always been between me and Allah and nobody else. There's been no interference, save for actually when I went on YouTube. As some of you might recognize me, I started making content almost as soon as I became Muslim, around the time I was learning about it. But then I realized that there's this thing that's really important in Islam. It's called humility. And I was very naive compared to how I am now. And suddenly I had all this external attention and people supporting me kind of, but also my nafs was like latching onto that external validation and was pulling me further away from my faith. And I was like, no. So I got offline and I was like, let's go figure out how to be stronger in my deen. And I just waited for Allah to give me a sign to want to ever talk about it again. And then everything in Palestine happened. And I was like, the only thing that makes me feel good, the only thing that makes me feel like I have some power and control is to speak well of Islam. And sucks to say, but when you can see somebody who looks like me talk about Islam, part of it's a little bit like your audience is like, dance, monkey dance, say mashallah. But on the other side, there are people who look like me who are finally learning about Islam, and they need to hear somebody that looks like me talk about it. And that's why I want to make this video today. So that's the very abridged version to my becoming Muslim. Come with any, that's my sign to get off because my baby's crying. Leave any questions if you have any.